Good morning, Seller Sessions. Izabela Hamilton, CEO of Rankbell and NFtomic. I don't think I've said that yet on Seller Sessions, but I have with me a very special and amazing human, Mr. Yev. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Of course, good morning because we are both in San Diego, California, and it's 8 a.m. It's good to have somebody in my town, you know. It's like when you see people from back home, you're like, "Oh my God, you're so much closer to them." That's how I feel.
Yep. And we're both on spring break, which
Exactly.
does which doesn't mean the same thing when you have kids.
Exactly. I love that you mentioned that. Does not mean the same thing when you have kids. I literally just asked Yev where are his kids because his house sounds very quiet. But my kid may come in, your kids may come in. It's totally fine. This is what we do. So but I'm so glad I got you in. Sorry for the late notice. You're such a good sport. Thank you for having it. Thank you for
Thank you for thinking of them. I'm excited about what you just mentioned. What you said you didn't say before about NFTs and talking about this topic. It's exciting.
exactly. And I know you've been doing a lot of different work over the years, and I've always followed you pretty closely. I think I've known you for, I don't know, at least 4 years that I can think of, but maybe even before that. And we didn't always talk in the beginning, but I've always followed you because your work is so exquisite and you're very tech driven. And I love that you pretty much moved into blockchain and NFTs and crypto and all this. What made you make this transition? Like, what do you see that others are not seeing?
Well, I feel like I'm always late to the party, so I'll say that up front. but
Feel bad.
but but I get in really deep when I do. So I got into it last year, like actually exactly a year ago, like literally like 3 days ago. It was a year ago, and it started with BitCloud, DSO, and it was just kind of like a little bit looking at it, but always paying attention because I'm so data driven.
You know what? Let's pause there for a second. I'm so glad you brought that up because I have BitCloud and I signed up probably around the same time as you. I think, well, yeah, it was for me, it was March of last year that I signed up for BitCloud. And actually, I saw your post the other day, and your coin is pretty. It's good. It's like what, 20? Was it $25 now?
Right now, yeah, right now I don't know what it is right now, but it's
But it's
it got me into it, and it was an early kind of like an early platform in there. So, but yeah, right now it's like actually not too different how it was a year ago, but it was ahead of the NFT trend. So I think that's why it's like actually important
what
where
going to happen with that? Because I signed up for it and I literally checked it only because you made a post, and I'm like, oh my God, I remember I had BitCloud and my coin is like $8, which I'm like, how does that even work? But what do you think we're just too early for that specific technology? Like, what do you think is going to happen with BitCloud?
yeah, so BitCloud it's the idea that any profile and an individual, like a social profile, can be tokenized. So anybody can buy somebody else's coin, your own coin, a friend's coin. Doesn't have to be an influencer or a company. That's kind of why it got started and went like viral right away for like a month. It happened for like a month, but it was a little bit hard to comprehend. What do you mean you can like buy somebody's coin? Right now, it's easy to understand because there's NFTs everywhere. If you're at least here, we're talking about that space more. So it's like every aspect, every digital asset, even physical asset, can be tokenized, can be on the blockchain. But BitCloud did that right away, and they did it as a platform. So this is where it gets a little bit technical. It's kind of like the innovators, the early adopters, like usually a lot of engineers are in it. They understand what it means that you're kind of working on this framework, this layer to make it possible for others to use this. So that's why it's not like somebody can um, start leveraging and having utility and using this like in their real life right away. And right now there's a lot of examples of that compared to a year ago where people were like their mind was like getting blown every day thinking about what does this mean, how can you apply it. But right now a lot of bigger brands and bigger celebrities, influencers are talking about it, but even like very experienced engineers, business people are in it talking about it. So whether it's early or not, I think right now is a completely different conversation than a year ago, than a month ago, or compared to like 2017 during other crypto peaks. So I think it's kind of going through these changes.
So BitCloud was your first, and then what happened after, and what made you really focus on this and be like, okay, I think this is the future. I mean, you believe that, right? You believe that this is the technology that we're heading towards, right?
Absolutely, yeah, yeah, and I think it's almost like philosophical, but during BitCloud, it was for a month. I found out about it. I got into it like right away, um, and then I right away found out different engineers all over the world that are like working on it, and we started building some tools right away. So this is kind of like a side project during there's like Amazon e-commerce stuff happening at the same time, and then it was actually right around the same time when like Clubhouse started happening and had the peak, like around that time. So it was like one of those things like, oh, is this just some trend or something like that? But I found out about it. But what was interesting that there's a lot of these like micro influencers and macro influencers getting into it, and they're saying like they always see innovation and sometimes it doesn't last, but there's something different about this one. I don't know if people always say that, but that was happening in BitCloud. And at the same time, something was happening that I was not part of. This was like all of the bored apes and all of these early NFTs. They were happening around that time. I missed that. It was just some other related community, but I was like in the other community that was like talking about these concepts, just not these other early ones. So it's happening at the same time. And that was for a month where we started building technology, tracking technology, all of these like coin transaction technologies. And it was kind of from a data perspective. It's like, what can you track? What can you analyze? So just like partly like invested in a couple of guys like all over the world to kind of just like build a few things. And that lasted for a month. And then it kind of like this BitCloud peaked and it started going down. And I had to get back into Amazon, e-commerce, Facebook advertising world again. So then there was this like 3-4 month period of like not being in BitCloud crypto, but they just started hearing people talking about it again, kind of like in October, November period last year in 2021. And that's when it was probably close to the peak. So it's probably like the worst time to get in. But that's when I just started hearing about it, and I just kind of remembered BitCloud, and then my BitCloud guys were still working on it because they're all over the world. They were kind of like focused on it. They were like still there. So I saw what they were doing the whole time, and then in October, November is when I just started hearing about it more from more friends. So it's kind of like spilling over into my life, but I felt like I was like late to the party because people are talking about it. And then there's this happened in the summer, this DeFi protocol, like all of this kind of spikes, because I didn't follow crypto in 2017, like not as much other than buying some at the peak and then forgetting about it because everything started going down.
That's what I did. I bought. I'm like trying to see right now because I don't really log into my Coinbase because it's like I don't know. I consider them as stocks, even though I shouldn't. But meaning I just invest and I just let it sit for years. But it's doing pretty good right now. Actually, lost. I don't like using that word. I don't like when people use it like, oh, I lost so much money. Well, did you sell it for you to actually take a loss? No. Well, then you haven't really lost. Same thing with stocks. So I lost for a while, for like months, and now I see that it's pretty good. It's all in green. I have some of the just the main ones, because that's what I do. I like to get into things even if I don't understand it necessarily. Like if I have a feeling that this is going to be the future, and it's kind of hard to dismiss this, the blockchain and the NFTs. And I feel like, the world is kind of divided into, I don't understand what that is, so I'm not going to look into it. I don't believe it's going to go anywhere. And there's the rest of us who are like, oh my God, we are so late to the party. But really, if you think about it, we're not really late. I mean, yeah, are we late on the Board Ape Yacht Club and all this? Yes. Do I kind of hate myself for it? Yes. But at the same time, I feel like we are aware that this is happening around us and we are taking initiative. And that's why I wanted to bring you on, because you are really, really out there and you understand probably even more than, me and probably all of us that are listening right now. So yeah, just tell us a little bit about NFTs and where do you see this going, and then I'll kind of tell you my take on it too.
Yeah, and what I'll say about NFTs, I got into coins and tokens first, and then DeFi, and then NFTs. So I went through this order of industries of blockchain, of crypto, and that's just kind of like how my process, how I'm working, kind of coming in from a data scientist background. So I got into and by coins, tokens, I mean centralized exchanges. So these are the top 100, the Bitcoin, Ethereum, all of those, and then there's the top 1,000, and then there's the 10,000 plus, and then you have like in that decentralized exchanges. So first I got into that, and from my technical mind, I'm like, all right, do I build a tool in this area? Let me go and use all of the tools out there. So in this kind of like 1 week time frame, I purchased a bunch of tools. I kind of started using a bunch of tools, and it's usually trying to buy coins, but different than there's kind of like the stock market where like you buy something as an investment and it's going up or down, and when do you sell it or you flip it? There's that part, but it's kind of like a project and community and individual type of approach where it's like any startup, any company, someone you believe in or anything like that can have a coin. Anybody can launch a coin. So it's a different feeling than the stock market, where before I'm like out of the financial industry because like I don't want to support banks and this whole financial industry. It feels different in coins. So I got in really deep in understanding that there's these patterns. A coin launches, the price goes up, it goes down, and then there's different trends depending on social media activity, partnership, funding, other types of events happening. Like, does a coin then launch an NFT related component with it? So is there like these synergy? Is there innovation industry? So after getting into that, then it's like finding out that there's another area of that, kind of like one layer above. And then it got into DeFi protocols, decentralized finance, of that you can just leverage finances and these coins in different ways. Again, I guess like it's very deep. Then finding out about NFTs, where at first I intentionally ignored it because I had this perception that it's like about pictures and there's a creative component to it, where I want to stick away from like I want to find out something algorithmically, technically, something that a tool can help. And with NFTs, there's a visual component, so I'm like, that's going to be harder to manage or to control. But then I realized it's the same thing as the coins, even more potential, because now you have this layer of creativity, this visual part that it just algorithmically will even have more factors to potentially have an effect on, which essentially means, is the price going to go up or down? Is it short term, long term, on the different dynamics there? And then your other part of the question on like, what does it mean in the long term? And this is, well, I feel like kind of like over my whole life, and maybe we'll align a lot of things here on kind of like empowerment and freedom. Like there's all of these parts of society that are controlled. Like for me, from an education standpoint, like I came from having a master's, having a PhD, but then after being done with it, I'm like, man, I was totally brainwashed the whole time of going to this academic route until I came out of it and kind of got into entrepreneurial world. Same thing in business and finances and health society. There's like everything that's controlled. And I grew up with that my whole life. So that's why I was always like open to alternative views of anything. If there's like something that's the opposite of the news, something that's out there, I'm going to listen to it, just because I know I had this like career experience that usually information out there is biased in some way. So then when all of this momentum started happening with NFTs, it was like all of this combination of like financial and freedom and careers, and then like working from home, like all of this in one. So I'm like, philosophically, there's something here where there's a lot of worldviews and things happening here, that there's something unique. So I have to pay attention just for that reason. And then, are there going to be careers for people in this, and technology? Can I build a software around this? Was like just other questions at the same time. But I knew that early companies were talking about it, and it's not like everywhere. It's so actually just a little interesting thing, when during the BitClout days a year ago, when we like made some of these tools, we saw like these big influencers signing up for a tool, and they're like privately messaging us. They're like, make sure you keep this private that we signed up, because they're signing up as their profile, and then they sign up for their tool. So we see that they're using our tool, but you go to their profile and there's like almost no activity. So I'm like, wow, I kind of had this experience from the Amazon software days, where like big brands would sign up, and I would be like struck where like, wow, this brand just signed up for my software. Same thing in the crypto tool space where like
how do they find out about your tool? Just kind of word of mouth, or because you're kind of like the first ones to really put something out like this?
It's probably just this network effect, mastermind effect, where usually someone that's way ahead, kind of the people that got the Bored Apes early, or these DeFi protocols that they get them like before the masses, before somebody puts them on a big YouTube channel. I think it's just like these networks, kind of like just in the Amazon world, whoever you're in a mastermind with, like your friends tell you something about or ask a question, and they probably heard it from somewhere, and it's usually the average people around us, or the median people around us kind of like hear those things. So I think that happens at the level of like even the bigger influencers too.
And you still have that tool right now, right?
Yeah, it still works, and like the DSO guys, like they're working on it. Like they just got like a bigger grant from, because like DSO is growing, and then they ended up being like on Coinbase like over the past year, like all of this stuff.
So what does your tool do exactly, if you don't mind sharing?
Yeah, so for that one, it was a network of tools. The first one was a trading tool, meaning an alert tool. As soon as a new influencer or brand signs up for the platform, you get an instant notification to buy their coin. And when you do it first, and then their price usually goes up because they do, or they do some announcement. So it's kind of like you get in really early, and that's where you saw these 100x jumps, because you get someone. Is my internet okay?
Yeah, it's cutting out a little bit, but I can still hear you. All this San Diego internet. We need to have a talk with them about it. No, I really love it. So it's still working, even though BitCloud is not as popular now. You still have people using that specific tool, right?
Yeah, the BitCloud is actually more has evolved much further, where you can you can make anything into a DAO. You can make anything into an NFT. They have the protocol, the technology behind it, and then you can take that and put it into other platforms. So we kind of like done that of expanding it beyond BitCloud. So they've done a lot of engineering innovation, where kind of like socially and on the influencer where it had a big peak and then kind of like died down from there, and then the users kind of like went down and been stable and then kind of like going up slowly. But it was that tool, and it was a network of tools where we made like a job site, and then we made like a review site, and like all of these sites where they're totally different. This was like the beginning of internet days, where we just made anything, kind of like what's the Craigslist of this, what's like the Zapier version of this, where just made little tools in the ecosystem of BitCloud. But for me, I'm like, you need data to track all of this, the integrations across all of them. So if someone is listing like a job or leaves a review of someone, kind of like a Yelp type of thing, then through the tracking tool, you know all of that, and you're the first one to know that, well, somebody just listed a job site, because it's all on the blockchain, it's all transparent, it's all open, and it's connected to like all of these other data sources. So that's like what we started building there. And then interesting, within like 3 to 6 months after that, BitCloud, this started happening in the entire crypto industry, like in the Bitcoin world, like all of those top 100 coins, like in the Avalanche, Solana, like we kind of like hear everything about there. There's so many startups now that are doing these things, but just in Web3, everything is taking over. Any type of company or functionality or value that an end consumer can have, or even like that engineers can have, like their technology, how they can benefit. There's a company for that, a software for that, and that's where NFTs come in. NFTs and coins, where there's different types of project, whether it's kind of more on the art, music, creative side, where just anyone can create it and kind of just experience what it means, NFT, like the community behind that, and then the financial part of potentially growing by buying or holding or flipping NFTs, and what that actually means between kind of some individuals that are a bit more longer term thinking, where they're taking the technologies with NFTs and like building around that. And that's where there's now there's just massive companies and massive investments. There's like the numbers like 5 to 10 somewhere in there, more investments going into crypto startups than Amazon, like aggregators and acquisitions. So it's like just fascinating. Like at that level, there's so much like early innovation and early adoption
But
happening in the space.
you still don't think there's a lot of people paying attention to this? I mean, probably for me and you, it seems like everybody's into NFTs, because like if you spend your time on Twitter, literally every single human that I follow, they're all into NFTs, right? So for me, when I do the transition, like, I go on Twitter and I follow all these people and I see the conversations and I do research. I spend, anywhere between an hour to 3 hours a day researching and getting myself educated on this, because there's really no other way, at least that I know of right now. I feel like we are the experts in the making right now. But then the transition is like, I go to Facebook or Instagram and it's like nobody talks about it. But in my head, because I see everybody talking about it on Twitter, in my head, I feel like everybody's talking about it. But really, it's a very, very small percentage that's even thinking about this. Do you feel that's accurate? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's very small. We're definitely in our bubble. It's relatively way more than in 2017. Like now it's not going anywhere. Like in 2007, people were like, is Bitcoin gonna reach 100,000? Is it gonna go to zero and everyone's gonna forget about it? Now it's way too mainstream. There's too many big companies. It's like hundreds of big popular companies that have an NFT. If you just type in crypto or Web3, blockchain, NFT, these words into like an Amazon hiring search or hiring types of job sites, just all of the biggest companies are hiring somebody in Web3. That was not happening in 2017. Like it was to some level, but more like an experimental. Now it's teams, departments that are doing it. And that's because these companies think 12 months ahead of time, right? 5 years, 3 years, 1 year ahead of time, a couple of months ahead of time. So they're making all of these hires, these departments, because they're going to come out with a technology at some point when the market is better or when that momentum like financially makes sense to release big features and integrations within their platforms, their tools, their like physical and their digital experiences that have the NFT component. So that's happening. But these are the even before the early adopters, like the innovators, and then there's the early adopters, and then there's the companies that are like don't really innovate. They're just either with the momentum or they do something boring but at a big level and it still works, where they kind of have to do it because the market is doing, and they have enough resources, whether it's like team and finances, where it like spills over into them and they're kind of like forced to do it. So some just have a big enough budget where like, well, we have to hire a Web3 person and see what this is about, even though there's a lot of hesitation around it before, but not this year. A lot of companies kind of went to the other side that were like against crypto years ago. Now it's
Now they're
that like paying attention and tipped over, and they like made hires. And then like from our world, kind of what does our world mean? Kind of like this entrepreneurial world, and I'm kind of coming again, being around a lot of like Facebook advertisers and Amazon brands, where this is interesting. I mean, maybe not a lot of people know this in kind of like our audience, is that after I got into like, now I'm just full time on, like my mind is full time, and like my time in crypto world is that I'm coming across a lot of Amazon sellers, e-commerce brands, entrepreneurs that were there's like transition. Some are focused on their Amazon and they have to, and even like some that like sold their brand and they're kind of like in the as an investor in the Amazon space, like they're like in there, but they're still in it full time, and they're like thinking like, all right, what's happening there? And there's some that completely went in, and a mix where like some had success, like some didn't, like kind of all over the place. But because I saw data from Amazon sellers, like who was like successful or not, like I see a lot of successful brands or like individuals that went into blockchain like all in, and I see them launching all kinds of projects, and some of them are stealth, kind of like private. They kind of like reached out to me and we like talk about different projects, and some that are like out there publicly, and it's DeFi protocols, tracking protocols, NFT projects, like kind of all over the place. But like a lot of the advanced people that that a lot of us know in the Amazon space are like doing stuff in crypto, and it's fascinating. Like sometimes I would come across some sort of crypto project and I'm like looking through their website, or I'm like in the Discord and I'm like founded by, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is like one of our Amazon people, someone that had like a software or a brand, and then so it's kind of fascinating to see that.
And that's one thing about us entrepreneurs. We're always willing to learn and get into different projects, whether they may or not be successful. And that is, that takes experience, and that takes learning, and that takes courage to actually do something that you want to do, and even with the thought that it may not work out. And as we both know, a lot of the NFT projects that we see right now, most of them are probably never going to take off, but in the event that they do, they could be potentially super super successful. So in my case, I appreciate NFTs and I appreciate the art. I'm not an artist myself, at least not to that level where all I do is think about art and create art. I've always been more fascinated on the on the utilities part of NFTs, which unfortunately I still don't see a lot of people talking about it. And when people think NFTs, they think, oh well, why would I pay $1 million or all this money for one picture? And then what they're dismissing and disregarding is sorry, I have a little cold. um what they're dismissing is this part of the utilities, which really makes NFTs what I believe NFTs will be. So the power behind what can this NFT bring to, whether it's a company, whether it's, a stadium full of, you know, sports enthusiasts that are going to see a football game or whatever that is. This is where I see NFTs going. I see NFTs as being really your ID eventually. Like I truly believe that there will come a future where our social security is going to be an NFT. Our, passes to the gym are going to be NFTs. Like this is where my mind is. And it may be 5 years down the road, 10 years, I don't really know, but this is where I see it going. What are your thoughts on that?
There's three parts of utility. Yeah, I agree with everything you said, and I want to go a little bit deeper because I want there's these conversations I see happening at the very deep engineering level of like these data engineers that a lot of times they're over my head, and it's like people that have been in Bitcoin for like 5 years or 7 years. I'm like, man, when they're talking, it's like frameworks and layers and like layer one, layer two. There's like that dialogue. There's utility conversation there. Then there's let's say on the other end where usually you see these mainstream critiques about, oh, like, is there a utility of NFTs? Is it for art? There's like a bunch of scams out there. There's like that conversation where there's this kind of there's this utility about what can you do with NFTs and having like a big mismatch of what that actually means. Somewhere in the middle is what I see some, and I want to put this into the context of e-commerce brands because I think people will understand right away a different type of dialogue on NFTs, crypto. So there's what a lot of people call it utility, but it's more like transitional utility. And it's like you have an e-commerce brand, somebody receives a physical product, they scan a QR code, and then it says, get your free NFT. You scan it, and then it goes to a site, and then you get some, you get into a Discord community, and then there's activities there, and you get some benefit with your product. And basically, it's like a NFT subscription type of benefit that you're getting that's digital, complementary to your physical product. Now, some people think that's utility. Like all that is just turning a normal digital value that exists right now through subscriptions. A lot of brands are doing that, and it's just calling it an NFT and it's putting it onto the blockchain. But that's more like transitional utility. You kind of have to start doing that until the real utility that becomes even further steps later. This is where it's not just like this digital benefit that you get you get one more thing online. It's like your whole like way of life changes where it connects to other parts of technology, and you can have technology. So it's like if you're checking the weather or getting Uber, like why would you use an app that's blockchain based compared to popular ones today, like Uber or DoorDash or whatever? Like, just why would you make that shift where it's the same? Like, those don't exist. So is like Uber going to come up with a Web3 version, or some company going to replace it? So that's what's the utility that will make that massive shift? And that's where the biggest one is data and transparency. Just more of that data is on the blockchain. So even in the e-commerce example, your data could be on the blockchain, and as soon as that happens, it creates more freedom for engineering, for technology to take over that data for more transparency for your consumers to like own the product, to be a micro owner in your company, not just the benefit that they'll get by having, you know, more content online because they have an NFT of your physical product brand, but they're like a they're like a nano investor in your company because they have a piece of that coin, or they're in part of a DAO or organization where they financially can benefit from your company other than the product. So you could buy the product for $20 and then a year later you actually may own $100 because you had a very small percentage of it as a NFT. But because there's more data open, this is where in it's easy to think about marketing because that's more space I'm coming from, but in operations everything can be on the blockchain. So in e-commerce, whether it's shipping or your advertising or your social media or like the finances behind the company, theoretically it should be all like on the blockchain, all open. A lot of companies wouldn't want this, but that's why it has to be a massive shift for everyone to not even question that that data should be out there. So it's like, why would I put my like accounting information out in the open for anyone to see? That's what the blockchain is for. That's what decentralization is for those opportunities to be there. And once enough companies do it, all of a sudden you can have these tools that say, here's all of these e-commerce brands, maybe not Amazon, because Amazon would have to approve this. You would have to like take this off of Amazon, or Amazon has to integrate it, or like there are tools, like there's like actually like something where you could take any piece of digital asset and put it onto the blockchain. So let's say if everyone's Amazon PPC data is on the blockchain, like you would know the PPC data of your competitor or of other like PPC softwares. Everyone's data would just be out there. Like one, let's just get over it.
And this is scary for Amazon sellers.
Yeah. So first we kind of have to, let's get over the mindset of whether you would do it or not. But let's assume everybody does it. Like, what would that world look like? And it's not even like kind of, oh, I have to hold it for myself because I'll be able to grow more of me having it. Let's sure that there's probably some truth in that by like not letting out something too early. But let's assume that 75% of brands that have that information out there, all of a sudden you can find patterns across that data of what are like the best practices. And sure, whoever's doing the best practices will get diluted more because other brands are doing best practices, but the brand is doing the best practices that let their data out will have access to new technologies. Like their PPC data could directly be integrated into weather. Like, what's the weather? Well, it matters when the shipping trucks are going to get somewhere where the weather is, when things are going to happen in the real world, because all of that data is on the blockchain. So just imagine the tools, the software that are going to come up that are going to find all of these patterns to optimize business processes. So you kind of like need that transparency in data, and that's what the blockchain like offers. So NFTs and like coins right now, it's like this transition discussion about, yes, it's opportunity for people to buy a coin and then flip it, or NFT because it goes up in price. So it's kind of,
but this is yeah, and I think that's what's hard for people to understand. One, because there's not much conversation around it. You know, there's really not much conversation around it because those who are doing it, like you've been doing it in the background for a year, I've been doing it in the background for, you know, a year. And it's like, you know, when we start talking about it, people are like, oh, wait, so NFTs are not just about art. And it's not. It's about, you know, having that transparency, which will eventually lead to a more open communication world. And beside, I mean, there's just so many things we wouldn't have time to talk about it in 1 hour on this show, but there's just so much more around it. And let me ask you this: are you, you know, because you mentioned the brands, and you know, NFtomic, my new company, this is, you know, one aspect of what we are doing in the company is helping brands get onto the blockchain and onto the metaverse, which is another step that, you know, we might have to do another episode on that. But I have one quick question for you on this. Do you feel like just having a footprint on the blockchain today in 2022 will potentially be worth something if anything, in the next few years? Let's say you are getting your product, just like you said, you're a brand, and now you have your NFT that goes along with your product, and now it's on the blockchain. And even if you just leave it at that, do you feel like that will potentially mean something in the future, or it can be a value even if you don't do anything with it?
Before I give the philosophical answer, let me give the very specific business application answer, where it's a risk and it's a low chance of that happening. So like maybe, right, it's kind of like an investment into any asset that there's, if in a year a lot of brands that do it, whatever they put onto the blockchain, most of it won't be there anymore. So if you're doing it as like a passive type of approach, or you kind of place that asset or create something, whether it's a NFT or make some transition in your company, or as a side project where like you have your e-commerce, you have your brand or your company, and then you do something that's Web3 blockchain related, in the future it probably won't be there in its form or its value. Share percentage of it probably will be higher worth, but then it's either like a gamble, or your research that you've done into it, or that industry, there's like a chance where that'll, like, some of it will go up, some of it won't. But it's not totally random. It's actually, now you could research enough to know what metrics increase the chance of that value actually being higher in the future. While like 3 years ago, before, it was hard to predict which company will grow or not. Now there's enough data, enough information, enough value that companies in blockchain are creating for you to be able to do that, and it will be worth more in the future. So it kind of depends if you mean like just buying a coin of something else, or an NFT, or within your company putting something onto the blockchain, it's going to be worth more. So that's kind of it's like it's a math problem essentially for a brand to decide to do that or not. But the other thing that's happening at the same time is the industry is moving. So the chances are higher that the answer is yes, compared to other industries that are like not blockchain related, where you don't know if it's going to be going up or down, because it's like, is it opportunistic? Is that industry up or down? Like, this whole industry is going up, so that investment makes more sense in there, in blockchain, compared to another industry where you have to kind of work on it to make sure that it's going to be increasing or not.
Yeah, that's a great answer. I believe that any type of movement right now onto the blockchain will be potentially worth something. If anything, the knowledge that you get by even trying. So when I started getting into it, obviously BitCloud was literally my first thing that I've ever done, and I was like, this is so weird. What the hell is this? And then you had to get Coinbase, because then you had to buy some Ethereum, and I forgot exactly what I had to do a year ago because it's been a minute. But I had to go through all these steps, right, for me to even be able to do that one little thing. And I was like, oh my God, this is so much. It can be so much for somebody to comprehend, just because it is a new technology. And for you, it's obviously easier than the rest of us, because your mind is trained, your mind works differently than the rest of us who are just entrepreneurs, right? Your mind is like, oh, I can see between lines, I can understand why DeFi, why all these things align the way that they do. And for most of us, is like, I have no idea what that is. So for me, I think, and for those listening, if anything, you should at least try to learn, whether you believe this is going to be the future or not. Just getting involved and spending a little bit of time to really understand, what is cryptocurrency? Why is this so prominent right now? Like, why are we even talking about this? Like, be curious, and I'm gonna rant just a little bit. I woke up this morning, and I usually do my meditation and I get ready for the day, and then habit, I scroll social media, and every single post was about Will Smith slapping Chris Rock. And I'm like, this is what people do. Like if you were to take that time and actually research how to be a better human, how to, learn about Bitcoin, learn about, but you see most people focus on external things that add no value to themselves. So going back to this, if anything, just take that time instead of researching why this guy slapped some other guy, nonsense, Hollywood BS. How about you spend some time into learning a little bit about the blockchain and educate yourself into NFTs? And again, whether this is going to stay or not, I think people should really take the time to learn about this. And it's unfortunate that we don't have enough around it yet, but as I said, we are the experts in the making. So for those listening right now, you may go home today and open a book or go on Twitter and find a subject that really interests you in the blockchain reality that we're moving towards. And who knows, you may be the next millionaire or billionaire because your idea may be the next one that's going to hit. So I just really want people to understand, and this is why I wanted to bring you on, and I had another episode on NFTs too, and I want to talk more about this. And because it is scary, it is kind of hard to understand, but there are people out there who can guide you and who can teach you about these things. So rant done. Tell me a little bit about what are some tools that you're creating right now, and what are you doing right now? Because I know you have the BitCloud tool, but what are some other things that you're working on right now, and can you share?
Yeah, let me go back to your rant first, and maybe I'll make sure I don't forget your question. But because just adding on to it, and like my previous answer was like a conservative version where like you kind of have to be careful, like cautious, like it may or may not go up. And so that's a key takeaway. What you said, you have to start looking at it at least to learn, because it is moving in that direction. And then the other side, the more aggressive answer of everyone that's all in on it, what I see. So first, a little philosophical background, like you see this happening everywhere in civilization across time historically, even like, because I'm coming from like a molecular science, environmental science background, like studying nature, you see things going from more physical to less physical, always, where things like aggregate and then expand. Like this process is always happening, whether it's like biologically, like in ecosystems, or like through societies. And we see that from like whether it's money or things going more digital, same thing, things are more like expanding. So cryptocurrency, NFTs, is the expansion version of any part of the industry, whether it's financial or conceptual or like physical value or like social, any type of element of kind of life, of everything that we're experiencing every day, has a physical component and then a more like ethereal component to it, more like conceptual version of it. So it's right now it's moving to that direction, which always happens in nature and in society historically, and it's happening now. So from that standpoint, yes, we're going to that direction, and we're nowhere close to that peak. So now if we overlap businesses and society onto it, every business is going to go through that, where it's going to go through that peak. So picture any futuristic movie or movie that's like futuristic, or like some dystopian society where everyone is like plugged into a video game and earning money or their time through some sort of virtual interaction. Like it's going into that direction, and right now all of the technologies are enabling that. So I think there's a scary component to that, where that'll be a scary life. So if we have a follow-up episode about metaverse, we should do it in person in San Diego, talking about the metaverse to kind of keep that like in-person interaction going. But you have to be more aware of and like conscious of how this industry is moving, because it could go into the very scary route. Like, why are you buying an NFT? Why are you taking any aspect of your business into the metaverse, into Web3? Why that is happening? Is it for more data transparency? Is it to make more profit? Is it to move this industry forward? And if you're not asking the right question, it's going to go into that route where everyone is going to be plugged in at home in the metaverse, trying to make money online, not going anywhere, seeing advertising everywhere. Like, it could be a very scary world. But the other route, where you could still leverage it for the good of using that transparency in the data. But this is where it gets exciting because the tools are early now, and there's so many people that are like all into it, where every type of like career or job, you see it, how would it work at this other level, where it's like a new technology, there isn't a path how to do it, but you see people thinking through it, kind of like these creative, innovative people, like, well, how would you order a Starbucks in the world? Well, maybe you do put on a headset and you're like interacting with someone and you order the coffee through this interactive interaction, and then yes, someone in real life like makes the coffee and delivers it to you, but you, rather than getting your your coffee like rewards, you actually have to go in person once a week to get the massive NFT reward. So it's like, you know, you can start incentivizing by bridging like the physical world with the digital world. So it's like there's brands that are thinking about like the big brands, any physical, like the popular brands, how can they make their brand or their experience kind of like this one step more transition into this Web3 world. So let me give a very specific example. I think this gets into then your question about like tools and what's out there. So let's go 2 examples. One is like a normal person, like a real person that's not like an entrepreneur, like the end consumer, like someone that buys Amazon products. They don't think about like business. They have a regular job and just kind of a normal person.
Normal person. That's the right. Yes.
Like, what are their activities during the day? So let's say it's like common for people to like watch like movies online or kind of like playing video games. Now you could do the same stuff you were always doing before, but in a Web3 version, meaning that just gonna give one example of like playing a game on the phone, because like a lot of people do this. Like I sometimes do it or used to do it, but not as much anymore. But like you just have a phone, and right now I have kids, so I'm watching my kids playing games more, so I'm even more aware of it, like people playing video games, and a lot of adults do like on their phone. But now just switch your game to a Web3 game. It's going to be very similar. It may not be like the best type of game because the industry isn't as evolved yet of putting games onto the blockchain, but you'll be able to make NFTs in it. You'll be able to financially benefit from playing a video game. It's not just like the games where like, you know, you spend 3 hours and you get 5 cents worth of some sort of reward, or like so because you like playing the game. You actually can create an NFT within the game, and then that could go on a marketplace, and 1% of those NFT out of all the users will be bought by someone for thousands of dollars because they want to have the best NFT, because someone turned that in-game element into something that's like the best across all of the other gamers. So it's like whatever you do right now, like watching something, like learning something the way you're doing it, there's a Web3 version of it now. So kind of just be aware of your life, every steps that you do. Is there a Web3 version of it? Because it'll give you that advantage of like not being like forced to learn, because that's hard, where like, all right, jump into it, and how do you do the MetaMask and start buying coins and all of that. It's more about what are you doing in life and a certain tool or app or website or interaction you're doing. There's a Web3 version of it. It may not be like as good, but doing it, you'll start learning that process. You'll benefit from the data transparency, the blockchain benefits of it, the potentially like the financial part of it, where you'll have an NFT in the process probably doing it. So that's kind of like for the end consumer. For businesses,
Let me just one small thing, because you mentioned this and I think it's super important. I know somebody that's an interior designer in real life, and now they're doing it in the metaverse, and they make more money than they ever did in real life. Continue.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's definitely happening, and because the industry is going there, we're just going to see that in everyday roles. So this is like just a normal person kind of being an early adopter will give them the advantage compared to when it hits the masses, and then the masses just kind of do what's like in front of them, and like what's told or what's on the media everywhere. Like your Oscars example, it's kind of what's the popular thing. That's what people are going to do or talk about. But then you don't really, you have a choice, but you don't. But most people don't take that choice, and they just kind of follow that. So try to make that transition right now, and then within like right away you're gonna start benefiting from that technology. But within a year, you might have some piece of asset, digital asset that will be worth something. It's like the real estate or before. It's like owning the stock of some bigger company before. So that opportunity is massive right now. I don't know if that's going to be happening in a year. I think it will, because brands, this kind of gets to the other extreme example. How can brands approach this? Because I heard from a lot of Amazon sellers as soon as I started talking about crypto, a little, like, I did it for a few months, like not saying anything about it. And then I'm like, all right, I have to start talking about it. As soon as I did, people reach out to me from Amazon world that are like, that have been all in on it. And they're like, man, I like kind of launched this NFT app or this tool or this like project, and there's like really fascinating stuff out there. But it's like, what can you do as a business? And will you have an advantage? So it comes back to your earlier question, like, will it have value in the future? And if you're like all in, like, of course it will, because now it's like too mainstream. It's going to go into that direction, and don't feel that you're late to it. You just have to start converting like some asset or a piece of your business process or something into Web3, or assigning resources to it. But then it's the same thing as like, do you do Amazon ads or start doing Facebook advertising? Like that dilution of resources. So I think it kind of comes into that decision. Are you going to be focused on it or not? But now I'm around businesses that are like all in on it. So it is this echo chamber I'm in, but opportunities where it's fascinating.
Absolutely. Let me ask you a few more questions, because we only have a few minutes, and I want to get as much as I can from you. So I'm going to NFT LA actually today, and it's 4 days, and I was supposed to go to NFT Miami, but I'm just too exhausted. I've been on the road for the past month. Well, how do you feel about all these events, and should people put a focus on them and try to attend a few of these just to get into the know? What do you feel like about these events? Do you attend any?
Well, it would be the same answer as for any events, like even Amazon events. Like, it's obviously worth it. Like the networking, the information, absorbing information. So these NFT events, yes. Like I think now it's just two young kids. So I've been like not doing stuff compared to before. So I haven't went to any NFT events. And again, it's like for me too, it'd be a 2.5 hour drive to LA. So I'm like, right now you could do so much like online and learn. Like events are worth it.
Right.
I don't know, that's
Just because I know a lot of people, for those who are, actually interested in learning about this, what are some places that somebody that's brand new right now, where would you send them if they know nothing? What is the best place to get some of this information, or are you recommending any books? Are there even any books out there, or what do you recommend people do to learn?
Yeah, this is such a new industry where there's so many different directions. You have to get into it actually like doing a transaction. That's what you just learn the most. So whether it's opening a wallet, like, is it on the browser, on the phone? There's more options now. So getting MetaMask, like doing a transaction, then very fast you're going to find out about, well, do you want to do flip NFTs, trade NFTs, or coins? And if you do, I'm just gonna like shortcut through a lot of things that it like took me like a month to learn more. Just start looking into like sniping type of tools, sniping analytics, and there's a bunch of them. So like I'm not gonna say specific. Well, there's like Trade Sniper, NFT in it. There's a bunch of them. NFT Sniper, Coin Snipers, and it's not necessarily to do it, because then it becomes like a day trading job of buying things and timing. But you'll be exposed to the community that is thinking about like momentum and projects, and then soon you're going to find out about, it's not all about sniping. It's not about, can you time something, buy it at the lowest price and then sell it when it's 10 times higher. You're going to start learning about like, well, do we do that or not? Which projects do we do it? Which projects do we hold? Are we helping the industry or not? Where is their utility or not? And you're going to just hear that dialogue from like these sniping communities. I found that they're sometimes a little bit more technical, but then there's an operational. It's like, how can you have an early advantage in a project? Are you more of like a people person, community content person, where you'll have the advantage by getting on an early whitelist, not because you jump through a bunch of hoops, but because through network effect, you hear about a project early. So that's more for like not the technical person that can snipe something and then sell it really fast, more like a technical. It's more about from the people and community aspect, where you'll get early into the project but then you're going to be realizing what is the value of certain project, which are real project, who has a solid team behind it, what are they actually doing, and then it's gonna be like this either like moral or internal discussion, which projects do you snipe or do you buy. So essential. But yes, for a resource, it's hard because it's moving so fast. Any like blog or resource out there changes like the topics and what they're talking about. So yeah, it's hard for me to say. I mean, there's like some like masterminds out there. There's like some groups, but I think this is one of those that it's such an early industry. It's not where like you just can recommend something and that's like where it's consistent information, because I see like every few weeks information change.
Right. I believe it. So I know there was one that I wanted to get into. It was called and I don't know if you're familiar with it, because you're right, there are just so many. It was called Metaverse HQ, and I was just trying to look it up on OpenSea right now. Have you heard of it? Last time I checked it was like $10,000 to get in.
Yeah, I have. Yeah, I've heard of other ones, and there's like other ones I'm in. There's ones where it's like I pay like over $10,000, and some that I'm in, I didn't pay, but I have access for someone else, and it's like $50,000 to access. There's like a bunch of them, and those are the ones where the conversations in there are a whole different level. And there's the like a e-commerce focused one. There's like, so definitely get into those again if you want to pay for those. But for a lot, there's again, I don't want to say like we're free content. There's a lot of free. There's a ton of free content, but there's a lot of like misleading information or behind. You kind of have to get into it, but you're gonna be in so many rabbit holes. Right now, I find new rabbit holes every day, and that's because there just isn't an expert. Sure, there are people that will understand it, they'll talk about it more, but the whole industry is changing. Like for me, I started building tools right away in it. I was like in March, and I kind of took a break, was doing it like just thinking about it like on the side, and then got back into it like October, November, and then since January this year, it's like all of the time. And I try to build different tools, and actually none of them finished, because by the time I'm like, all right, here's like, let's do like a 1-day tool where it's like an easy feature, and then some things work, and then I jump into a new rabbit hole, find out something else that's working, where you kind of have to do like smart money, like smart wallet, kind of whale watching, where you're following others that are having success, whether it's coins or NFTs, and that jumps through a lot of things that like are harder to figure out because someone is already doing it for you. So kind of look into those strategies where it's called like smart money strategies, or just like watching whales. You learn a lot more than just kind of being in these groups with tens or hundreds of thousands of people, and people are telling you about projects. It's going to be distracting because there's so many projects. Like a lot of my tools just like didn't get finished because I found out about a new layer. That's how the technology already evolved in the past week or in the past month, that someone built a new platform or a tool that'll make something easier. So that's been interesting to observe, that it's just moving so fast. You have to dig into it, and then you'll see like where those conversations are going. It's like every like 2.5 weeks, something is different about some DeFi direction. Something shifts in the NFT space. There's like a new platform that comes out, and it changes the approach of how all of the previous projects or new projects will do their project, because this platform changes a certain functionality. So that's been interesting, but you kind of have to get into it. So I'm
is it hard? It's also confusing, and it also changes every moment. So definitely get into it, guys. No, it sounds like we're crazy people. I know for people that are listening to this, I'm sure they're like, "What in the world is happening on Seller Sessions right now?" But let's see. What I mean, I could talk to you for hours because obviously we're both passionate about it. But if you were to buy one coin right now, what would it be? One that you think it will last, for a long time to come. If you were to invest into one.
That's a great question. I'm a split tester, so I've bought like thousands of projects. To have most of them fail, to have the like couple of hundred that are having momentum or learning through the experience. So I'm not the type of learner to like go with one process. And that answer, usually it's an expensive coin or project. So like I would just get into any of the top 10, the blue chips, the ones that are usually the expensive. It'll cost you thousands of dollars, and not necessarily for the project, but the community, the people in it, because they're launching newer projects, they're seeing conversations. So I would say it's actually safe, like any of the top 10. The actual utility value, that's hard to say, because there's projects that are like what they're doing, actually technology, is just going to change too much. You have to follow people that have been doing interesting stuff, and it's usually like all of these top 10 projects or like top 10 tools. Again, there's lists online. You can just like top 10 tools. The people that make them, they usually make another tool, and then that's where like the innovation goes there. So that was my workaround for an answer, like not one specific project, because it's not actually about the project yet. There's things where, yes, like, do you want to get into Avask or a particular, or Cool Monkeys? What does their roadmap look like? There's interesting stuff, but I'm not kind of like that deep into like what people are like building the value there. I'm more about how does it integrate into like the technology, other components. So any of the top 10, if you're new, then it's way too risky to get like any project that has a fascinating roadmap, because 99.9% of that roadmap is not going to get done at all. So you have to, if you do have to pick one, it's what do people refer from those top 10, like someone that's in that top 10, like what projects do they launch? Because usually they went to the community, that they saw the evolution of those top 10 projects, that they're growing, that they need to start adding value. So then their next project will actually have that. So it'll shortcut through a lot of other projects. Try to get projects that are launched by someone that's in the like top 10, top 25. Then, it kind of gets like how riskier you want to be if you want to find the top 100. Because now there's several thousand NFT projects and tens of thousands. There's like hundreds of thousands of different coins, but maybe like around like a couple thousand that are like actually like legit with teams and funding behind it.
Got it. Well, thank you so much. Yeah, thank you for your time. And I know you have to go be with your kids, and I have to be with mine. Thank you again for joining us today, and let's continue this conversation very, very soon, because there's so much we didn't cover. So for those who want to reach out to you, is Facebook the best way?
No, probably Twitter's better, and I have like a Facebook group and Discord, but again, that's like moves so fast on how that's going. I would say Twitter, so at Dr. Yev, that's probably the best. And if you're moving to that direction, you probably have to start learning Twitter, Discord, Telegram more, and start incorporating your brand. So Facebook too, I'm still on there for my Web 2 people, but Twitter is becoming a lot better for this, to find out about projects and get the early momentum.
Love it. Thank you again for your time, and thank you for coming on Seller Sessions with us.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Bye.